Happy Monday, and welcome here to another edition of Husker Online Headlines. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, back from a weekend, but it really wasn't much of a weekend for us. It was a working weekend, but a very enjoyable working weekend. As we had camps, we had 7-on-7.
We had a free hot dog on Friday night. Remember
got a free hot dog, leaving the Memorial Stadium and the Boneyard Bash, but
that was a treat, by the way.
Yeah.
Those Fairbury brands, I don't know. It's like a magical trick they play. Like how could those things be that good?
It was a good hot dog, but
yeah, they should never, ever, ever consider going away from those.
They're in. Valentino's runs they're in the stadium.
All right. Sorry, Coach.
All right. Well, let's get into
let's talk ball. Coach.
We got a lot to get to, Coach. And let's get into headline number one. As we mentioned, the busy weekend. It was a home run weekend for Matt Rhule and Nebraska football in a lot of different areas. And, we mentioned the 7-on-7, the Battle of the Boneyard. And nobody really knew how this was going to go. It had never been done before. Nebraska had, to be fair, over the last 20 years, Nebraska's probably had about 5 or 6 7-on-7 camps. But it's always just kind of been like local high schools bringing their teams.
Yeah.
And some of those teams might have had a prospect here or there. But it wasn't, necessarily
a national event,
a national branded sponsored team. Well, this was what Matt Rhule and his team came up with. They're like, look, let's work with Adidas. Let's figure out a way to get the top national teams here within the framework of the June camp rules. So it had to be in June. It has to be on your campus. It has to, fall into the rules of what a camp is. So there has to be some instructional element. There has to be a price that kids have to pay to be a part of it, $50 or whatever it is, and then go from there. And so they put the framework of this together, and there are 12 teams total, but 9 of the 12 you would label as kind of regional, national, sponsored teams, the best of the best. And this was a home run. I mean, you could make the case that we have never seen this many talented football players in one setting at the high school level in the history of camps at Nebraska.
This is a classic example in my mind of show me, don't tell me. Show me what you're doing. This is Nebraska being innovative and pushing the limits, which I believe Nebraska has to do because of they have some natural disadvantages that are built in, mainly geography. Not as many disadvantages. Perception and geography. Those are two that they still have to battle. So perception of the city, is that what you're talking about?
If I told you, hey, you're going to go to Delaware, like you'd be like, well, what the hell? What the hell's in Delaware?
Yeah.
I mean,
I would have something in my mind's eye that what I think Delaware looks like. And that's what you're saying people do with Lincoln. Also, Nebraska's still overcoming its lack of results on the field. So they have to push. They really have to be innovative. They have to push the limits. And here it was. You're right, Sean. There was a ton of talent in town. It was pretty remarkable watching the 7-on-7.
I mean, as much, almost so much that you couldn't keep track of it.
Right.
And what was easy to do was to keep track of the good players like Trey Taylor at quarterback, Ahmad Hudson, and
Mark Matthews. Well, no, he was at the Huddle event.
The Huddle event, but the guys when you stand out in that setting.
Yeah,
and Trey Taylor and Mark Matthews did,
or Ahmad Hudson,
Ahmad Hudson stood out. You had Torrey Pittman from Omaha Central playing for a national team, but you had the best teams from Miami and California, Georgia, all over coming up, and this thing's only going to get bigger. I think now that Matt Rhule and his team have a blueprint, and Adidas is behind this,
they're behind it.
They're going to push, and again, they don't want this to be like, local high school teams bring their team up. They want it to be kind of more of a showcase 7-on-7 event. They're going to push to get more teams here. Can you get this thing to 15 or 20 teams next year?
Yeah. And you wrote this in your column this morning, but it was sort of startling, almost eerie to see Cam Newton out on the field coaching against Nick
Amiliabi.
Yeah. Thank you. We knew Cam Newton was bringing a team. We didn't know Cam Newton was coming himself, but there he was, 6'5", 246. active coach. He's a very active, animated coach out on the field at Hawks, then out on the field at Memorial Stadium. That's the kind of thing that you can't put a price on that. I mean, it's Nebraska was this sort of hub for an afternoon and a night, you know.
You made a tweet, I remember your tweet something about like sitting here in the Hawks watching Cam Newton coach against Nick Amiliabiaba, the father of Nico.
Right.
And some guy goes, Sipple, what is it like on Mars?
Exactly.
And I mean,
that's funny. I didn't see that. That's funny. That is funny.
I mean, in the football world we live in, right. That's about as Mars as it gets.
Right. I mean, Nico's dad was a huge news story recently because of his son departing Tennessee in a highly newsy move. I mean, for all kinds of reasons, but he was good to us. And there you go. Look at that picture, Sean. Look at that picture. Good God. Now, Matt Rule coached Cam Newton in Carolina.
And they have a good relationship.
Yeah. So there you go, Sean. And check that size on Cam Newton, who
didn't play defensive end. He was a quarterback.
Right. And he was voted recently by, I think it was, I want to say it was, it's not Pete Thamel. Who's the national writer, like his main competitor, a national writer? Pete Thamel, college football. Well, the other guy, he put together.
Stuart Mandel.
No, keep going.
Bruce Feldman.
Bruce Feldman. Sean, you're the best. Feldman put together a list of the top players of the 2000s. And who was number one?
Cam Newton.
Cam Newton. I think Sue was 3. But that gives you an idea of just how good he was.
Yeah, Cam Newton here. But, the other part of the backdrop, yes, you had the official visitor weekend here for Nebraska, but you also had this massive Huddle event as well. And
amazing.
What a genius way to do this, because if you just say, hey, come to Nebraska for an unofficial visit as, an underclassman, it's a little harder to sell that sometimes.
Because is this basically a sponsor Huddle?
Yeah, well, so it's really no different than what On3 did. So On3, the last couple of years, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars hosting their NIL summit events.
Okay.
And they would bring in 100 top players all over, and the best of the best. And then they would have keynote speakers like Kirk Herbstreit, Libby Dunn, the Cavender twins, Will Compton, other NIL agents, lawyers, educational people about the process. Well, we didn't actually do the event this year. I think is expensive, and you just kind of try things and see what works. Well, Huddle essentially kind of launched something like that on their own, and they put together their own. They called it a recruiting symposium, where they had speakers come in. And the difference with On3 and Huddle is, guess where On3 is at? Nashville. Guess where Huddle's located? Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yeah, we were at Huddle looking out. I didn't even know you could see Memorial Stadium that clearly from the Huddle office.
I could see our office.
That's amazing. So yeah, it was a we'll call it symposium, a litany of speakers, but 20 players with huge national brands. We keep mentioning Mark Matthews. Why do we keep mentioning Mark Matthews? Because he, Sean, is the number 1 player in the state of Florida. I mean, to have that designation is amazing.
Well, Mott Hudson was here for that event, and then he chose to play, and you can go down the line. I mean, that was a star-studded group of underclassmen. No team in America will probably have that type of group come in this year.
Yeah,
of the 27s and the 28s.
Right.
So give Matt Rule again a lot of credit here that they figured out a way. Hey, let's utilize a national company. Everybody's recruiting process, where does it start with? Huddle. You go to anyone's Twitter page. What's on their top of their Twitter page? Huddle. They're linked to their Huddle. So it's perfect. It's genius. It's a Trojan horse to bring these recruits into Lincoln. Oh, and by the way, down the road, let's go check out Nebraska.
Yeah.
And will you get all these guys? No. But as you joked, get 2 of them.
Right. Maybe
get 3 of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're not going to get all of them, but if you get a few, that's.
Well, you couldn't afford to get them all. I mean, that's
like that's a reality check. That was a reality check, but you're right.
Nobody could.
Mark Matthews, the top player in the state of Florida, the number 2 left tackle in the country, is going to command a lot of money, right? I mean, a little different now since the settlement. We'll talk about that.
But yeah, the event for that, and I get the sense they want to do that again. Now the question is, do you want to continue to do them together?
That's the big question.
Or do you want to spread them out a week or two?
What do you think?
Well,
You're the AD in this
I
room.
know initially there was a thought to have the Huddle symposium, the recruiting symposium during the spring game weekend, but we didn't really have a spring game.
Right.
And honestly, I think they made the right call not doing it. I mean, I don't know if that spring game weekend would have been, as good of I think this was, personally, I like Lincoln in June. I think Lincoln in June really does sell itself well.
Well, Saturday was a gorgeous day. Now, there's a part of me that says I like all of that conglomeration of talent around that campus in one weekend. So 20 guys at the symposium, 12 teams. I'm at the Boneyard event, and then 10 official visitors. So do the math. You have a lot of guys. Now maybe Matt Rule would come back and say, no, that's too many guys. That's too many guys in 1 week.
Well, we talked to Coach Rule briefly Sunday. He was tired. I mean,
he was wiped
the
out.
amount of energy you have to exude to kind of be on for that long at the level it takes.
I've never been in that position where I had to exude that much energy in a setting like that, where you had to know all the names. Like you said, you had to be on. You had critical people that you need to talk to and just be on your toes all the time.
Look at these guys. They're taking a little break.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all know, we've heard it, now we've heard it over a period of years, that June is a challenging month for coaches. We've seen it when we were in Belton, right? Belton, Texas. We saw those coaches get off the plane and you saw the fatigue. I mean, it was really evident.
Well, then you really could see it in the smaller D1s that were working these camps, because it was like 95. It was hot.
Yeah.
I mean, pure Houston sun and heat.
Yeah. And those guys just grind away. They grind away. You got to find talent. That's the key.
All right. Well, what a great event. And I think this is going to be something that we'll see Nebraska do a lot more in the future. But okay, let's before we get into headline number 2, HuskerOnline headlines brought to you by Billings Group, a trio of financial advisors made up of Lance and his 2 sons-in-laws, Josh and Nate. Yep, son-in-laws, 2 of them. They're based in Salina, Kansas, because someone has to be, and they serve clients in more than 10 states, including places you've actually heard of, like Nebraska, Colorado, and Texas. They do financial advising and coaching, investment management, basically all the stuff that you should be doing with your money, but you probably aren't. Nate is a lifelong Nebraska fan, a longtime listener here of Husker Online. And if you ever watched Nebraska football or the stock market, you know both are emotional roller coasters. And that's why Billings Group is here to walk you through the highs and the lows. Billings Group, your financial advisors by your side for life's journey. They don't offer therapy, but they are good listeners. Visit them at billingsgroup.com. Securities offered by registered representatives through Private Client Services, member FINRA, SIPC. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives through RFG Advisory. A registered investment advisor, RFG Advisory, Billings Group, and Private Client Services are unaffiliated entities. There you go.
You did a good job.
I'm getting that down.
Yeah, pretty good.
I mean, it's like being like a football quarterback trying to like spit out like a long play.
Yeah, you got some work to do, but it was good.
That was a good run.
I'll give you a B.
All right, let's get into headline number 2. Breaking down the key recruiting storylines that came from the weekend. And, I think first and foremost, I want to start with the official visitor weekend for Nebraska. They had 10 in, and, you get the sense that Nebraska is in really good position with at least 2 of the 10 already. Hayden Ainsworth, the offensive lineman out of Mississippi. A lot of RPM predictions went in for him. And then Cameron Wilson, an edge out of Miami, Florida.
Ooh,
he's a Syracuse commit.
Right.
But he's got some RPMs now from Brian Munson, Steve Wilfong, and our team after the weekend. So that's a good sign. I think Brownow was here as well for Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
CJ Brownow, one of the top recruits in their class.
Corner.
I do think that the weekend went well with him.
Good.
Brian Bonner was here, their top running back target, a 4-star.
Saw him walking around with EJ Barthel. Good looking kid. Good looking. Looks like he should look.
You had Kevin Obot here,
Big.
or Kelvin Obot from Idaho. and he was the highest ranked prospect here, number 78 overall in the country.
Offensive tackle from Idaho.
Kason Thomas from Iowa. Ryan Merritt out of Miami Southridge. They seem to be very high on Nebraska. In fact, I probably get tagged and mentioned more from them about Nebraska than any recruit I've ever been. So you got to think that they're in a good position with Ryan Merritt. He met with Mark Manning as well about wrestling.
Good.
He's a center prospect. That's their number one ranked center prospect that they're on the board with. Luke Sorensen, the tight end, was here from Anaheim, California. Another guy, Rex Waterman. So he had 9 official visitors total.
Okay, 9.
You're going to have a couple. You're going to have at least one here on Thursday, then 10 over the weekend. So another 10 expected to be here this weekend.
No, but expected really a verbal coming out of this weekend, right? A little early.
It's close, though.
Close on a couple guys.
Yeah, I think you try to because, everyone's trying. You're not just going to, not let people. But,
no,
yeah,
I get that.
As far as committing on the visit, I think that doesn't seem to happen as much. I think you usually let it cool off for a day or two, then it happens. And now when these guys commit, it's not about it's about getting an edit done and a video done or whatever. There's a lot more production into a commit.
That's a good point, Sean. And I think we should also add, sometimes we don't talk about this a lot, but Nebraska, their style is not hard sell. They're not a hard sell program. You know what I mean? They want it to kind of evolve organically a little bit, I think. I don't know, Sean, here's what I was going to ask you. What is it? Do any hard sell programs come to mind? Is that SEC type stuff?
I think the hard sell now is 2 things.
What?
Limited spots or money.
Right.
And, you can say, look, this is the offer that we have now, but today's price is not tomorrow's.
Mm-hmm. That's a hard sell. You're right.
And I think that's going to happen more and more. Like, hey, we want you, but here's the deal. We only have one spot and it's worth this much money.
Mm-hmm. I think hard sell can be dictated by circumstance. You're right. Generally speaking, though, it's not Nebraska style. And I can't think of a time where it really has been Nebraska style.
Spots are going to be at a premium this year, though, in general, for everybody at the highest level.
Yeah, we talked about that yesterday. What you're talking about essentially is 15 incoming freshman players. 15.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe 17. Who knows? But, there's different approaches.
You better be elite, right?
Like Iowa State's doing a completely different approach. They're going to take probably over 20 high school guys, and they're going to take a lot of guys that aren't going to really cost them any money.
And they're going to take a lot of guys that Nebraska wouldn't take.
Right. Like where Iowa State's like their only Power 4 offer.
Right.
And so for them, they're not going to have, and Jamie Pollard, I'm not saying anything, like he has come out and said, we will not have the full 20.5 million. Like we're going to have to operate under that number. So for them, they can't go out and just chase that. They have to find the right guys for them. So people will recruit differently in this new era that we're in. And Iowa State versus say how Nebraska is doing it is a complete, a great example of that.
They will not be the only Big 12 team that doesn't have 20.5 million to give. There'll be other Big 12 teams that don't. In fact, there was a coach who told me, now this was a few months ago, but he said about half.
Texas Tech will have it. TCU will have it. Baylor will probably have it.
Okay.
I would think.
I don't know if KU would have it. I don't know if Kansas.
Texas Tech, though, is probably positioned to be as one of the best NIL teams in the Big 12 now.
Yeah, you got to watch Texas Tech.
Like they're looking at it now. If you're in Lubbock, like, hey, we could get the playoff bid out of this league. Yeah. I mean,
they're moving in that direction.
With Shedeur Sanders gone and Travis Hunter gone at Colorado, like what's Colorado going to be? And Arizona State, I think, is another one to watch because it's an attractive sell. Like you've heard Dillingham come out and say, he's like, why can't we be Clemson in 2009? Like Clemson was basically like we were. Like let's become the new Clemson.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of reasons why they can't be, and I can't really think of any. I mean, I think location, they're fine, right?
Yeah, Arizona State,
it's pretty good.
Is one of the best party schools in America. I mean, like there's a lot to sell there, and you can use your imagination as.
I get that. I mean, when I think of
selling,
yeah, I mean, when I think of the power vortex of college football, it's generally the Southeast, not the Southwest. That's what I mean. Location would favor a place like Clemson. favor. Doesn't mean Arizona State doesn't have.
Well, Arizona State was a bogus target call away from beating Texas.
I'd have to go back and look at that target call.
Well, they called it a target on the field,
Okay.
and it was, and then they overruled it after replay. And
Okay.
if the target would have happened, the game, Arizona State would have been able to win the game at that point.
Well, we're not going to relitigate that.
But I'm saying like that, like they're in their mind, that's where they're at. Like they got this great quarterback, but yeah, the Big 12 and the Big 10 completely different approaches for.
Yeah, because frankly, the Big 12 is not every school is not going to have 20.5, and in the Big 10, I'm going to say every school is going to have the 20.5 benefits of the network, right?
I'm curious what Central Florida will end up having, like a place like that.
Central Florida?
Yeah.
Good question. Good question. I don't know.
Because you would need some people to come up with that money for you.
I'd like to have a list of the schools that are going to have the 20.5 and the ones who are not.
I'm sure Ross Dellinger is working on that story right now.
Right.
That sounds like
that's something that some schools aren't going to volunteer. I don't know how that's going to work. God, we're in a new world, Sean.
All right. Before we go to headline number 3, Mr. Steve Sipple. Headline 3 is brought to you by who?
Sean, Larson Motors. If you're looking for a new vehicle, how about going for a new experience? At Larson Motors in Nebraska City, Larson Motors is one of the Midwest's only dealerships with all the major brands in one location. So find your new Chevrolet, GMC, Hummer, Ford, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram. Really never has been easier. So start your new experience today at LarsonMotorGroup.com. Sean, that's Larson with an O, or at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. If you haven't been to Nebraska City for a while, how about heading there to Larson Motors, where you'll find real people and
real deals.
Good job, Sean.
All right. Well, Larson Motors, proud sponsor here. Let's get in now to headline number 3. The House settlement case has been ruled on. What's next right now in college football? Like that is kind of the question. What is next after the House settlement?
You know what's next.
It was kind of the ultimate Friday night, and it wasn't done by design, but it came out like at 9:00 at night on a Friday.
Thank God for Pete Nakos, who, by the way, great job. He did he did a great job reporting on this.
But one of the most seismic stories about the future of college athletics gets released on a Friday night at 9:00.
I mean, we could butt heads a little bit on that, the seismic nature of it.
We knew it was coming.
Yeah, it's seismic. I don't know if I'd put it as one of the most seismic. We could debate this. One of the most seismic stories in college football history. The reason I say that is because I don't know if it's going to solve a lot, and I think we're on the same page in that regard.
You could argue that it was more seismic in 2021 when the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that basically allowed NIL to happen on that July 1st day.
More seismic.
And nobody was ready. I mean, when July 1 came at that time, schools, ADs, compliance departments were not ready.
They're ready now.
And they were kind of caught flat-footed, and it allowed collectives and these things to get going very quickly, where it basically became a pay-for-play model.
Right. Now what we're talking about is what's happening is the courts and the schools and whoever are pushing college athletics closer and closer to a pro model. It's stopped short of the collective bargaining piece, but it's probably inching towards that still. For instance, they have that clearinghouse to which you referred earlier. It's called NIL Go. And that is it has to approve any NIL deal of $600 or more. You know what's going to happen, Sean. There's going to be a school, and probably a desperate school, a school that needs a player badly and is willing to pay over market value. And they're going to say, we're going to pay this guy $1 million. The clearinghouse is going to say, no, that's not his market value at all. You can't do that. Then what happens?
They're going to sue.
There it is, Mr. Attorney. Here it comes. The lawsuits. You can see that lawsuit coming a mile away, right? Am I wrong?
Yeah. And well, the problem is, so these schools are going to have 15 million plus for football,
right?
Internally.
Right.
How far?
75%.
I guess the question is, what are the limits of that money? Like, what is your max amount of money of that 15 million you're going to spend for each position room.
Yeah.
Then how do you go to your collective and create new legal ways to top that?
Let's think out loud. The 20.5 million, and then so what you're saying, like the $15 million for the football team. I don't think that will be hard to regulate. I think you have a general manager in place.
You have a budget for each room.
You have a budget. You have a general manager in place to oversee it. I don't think that's the tricky part. I think the NIL piece is the tricky part, and the clearinghouse is the tricky part for everybody involved.
Well, and how many things are going to happen off the books?
Well, that's right. And how and what's the enforcement model? We don't know that, right? There's a college sports commission now headed up by a commissioner I've never heard of from Major League Baseball. But how's the enforcement going to be handled? How stringent will it be? How many people will be involved? Those are questions we don't know.
Well, and they don't have like the ability to access every athlete's bank records.
What did you
it's
an algorithm, right? Is that what we're talking about?
What?
The clearinghouse.
Well, the clearinghouse will have data of other deals on their hands. And I would actually think that open doors now, this new world, they're going to actually become pretty valuable. Where I felt like previously a lot had changed for them with the collectives kind of controlling NIL. But now open doors does have a lot of data on what deals are, what athletes make. So they are kind of a valuable NIL operator with what's going on now going forward. As far as knowing how much each deal every athlete gets. But yeah, you have to kind of separate like Caitlin Clark type NIL, Livy Dunn type NIL.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you're just going to pay some random right guard transfer edition from Tulane $800,000.
Right. Will it get approved? And what happens if it doesn't get approved? Forget the lawsuit. I mean, and then here's the thing. You talked about this the other day. It really got my attention. If you try to beat the system and get caught, the player's ineligible. I mean, think about if Rocco Spindler were ineligible, the impact that would have on Nebraska. Just name a good player. If the left tackle Elijah Pritchett was ruled ineligible right now, it's trouble, right?
Nothing's going to probably happen though this year because all the deals have been front loaded and done. So I don't think we're going to really know where this all goes until like December.
Okay. They were front loaded at 11:59 a.m. by a lot of people on Friday night.
July 1. You still would have till July 1, I think.
Well, double check that.
It doesn't start till July 1st.
Right,
so
I think they had to get deals in place by Friday night is what I read.
By Friday. Okay.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
So, here's what NACO said. D1 schools from non-Power 4 can choose to opt into revenue sharing, but must formally do so by June 15th, at which point a full list of participating schools will be made public. The other question that lingers is P4 schools won't pay out the full 20.5.
That's like we just addressed that, but that's a big question. And how will that be public? Will that be immediate?
It's kind of like a death blow to your school if that gets out. Like that you're automatically operating with like less bullets.
Death blow might be a little strong.
Well, it's a recruiting knock.
You're right.
Like,
I don't know about death blow, but I'll go with recruiting knock.
And the way the model of the 20.5 goes is, about 75% of that's going to go to football. 15% is going to go to basketball on the men's side. So 90% right there. Mm-hmm. The other 10% at Nebraska will go to volleyball, women's basketball, and other athletes.
Yep.
So yeah, there's
Sean,
the collecting bargaining piece too.
Collective bargaining.
The players don't really have a say.
No, they don't.
And that's going to be the big issue is like you're negotiating on behalf of the players, but guess what? The players aren't involved.
No. And then once you go to collective bargaining, they become essentially employees. And then there's a whole new set of ramifications. And like I just said a little bit ago, you're just moving closer and closer to pro sport, right? I mean, student athlete, do you even use that term anymore? Student athlete?
I mean, they're still students, but
they are.
Yeah, Greg Sankey, I know they are more in favor of a model where it's just capped at 20.5. They don't really want all the other streams of revenue because a lot of the SEC schools, maybe other than like a Texas or Texas A&M, they don't have as much money as some of these northern schools. I mean,
so you're saying they don't want the NIL,
they want more regulation with this clearinghouse. And
okay,
I mean, like Dave Portnoy coming in and buying Bryce Underwood from LSU.
Right.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, like Texas Tech doing what they're doing.
Yeah, and not SEC has the greatest fans in the country for a conference, but they don't have as much money as some of these other northern states do.
Right. For instance, Alabama's a great example. They don't have the big booster base. They have, of course, they have some rich boosters, but not like maybe you'd expect.
Think about Michigan. It's an Ivy League level school with 50,000 students.
Mm-hmm.
So think how successful those graduates are,
right,
and how much money Michigan's alumni base has.
Yep. I think Ohio State would fall in that category.
Close to, I mean,
to a certain extent, it's not as traditional academic institution, but Ohio
USC is the same way. USC is a hard institute. I mean, so they have a lot of wealthy alums.
Yeah.
I mean, so they're the SEC, and Greg Sankey continues because the coaches in the SEC don't want to play 9 conference games. So he's continuing to fight to keep it because they want it at 8.
Yeah.
Because they know what 9 means.
What's it mean to you?
It means their records aren't going to look the same.
Right.
And they're not going to be as pretty looking.
And that affects their.
Yeah. And you could argue going to 9 games is what killed the Pac-12. The Pac-12 was the first league to do it, and their teams didn't look as good because they beat themselves up. And the SEC knows that too. So SEC is kind of like Greg Sankey is doing a lot of talking, because right now Tony Petitti is in the power position. His TV deal is worth more money. His teams make more money.
Usually you fear a man who's not talking more than someone who's sort of seems uncomfortable and is talking a lot. There's an inner, I feel like Petitti understands internally we're fine. We don't have to talk a lot.
Yeah, he's got CBS, Fox, NBC. His teams make $9 million more per team right now because they play an extra conference game. By the way, they got 4 playoff bids last year.
And they've won the last 2 national titles. It's probably a reason he's not saying much. He doesn't really have to, right?
And the SEC has created more of a model where they know how to boost their RPIs. And even in basketball, they play 2 less conference games than the Big Ten. So that takes a 16-win team in the Big Ten or 17-win team and makes them a 19-win team. And they did the same thing with baseball. And look at the SEC. They got all these bids in baseball, and they're only going to have 2 teams in Omaha.
Got 2. See, Sankey's probably not overly thrilled with that, right? Who knows? But
yeah, they want control.
But just to wrap up the conversation about Claudia Wilkins signing off on this, it's progress, but it's going to be followed by some more tumult, right? If I were a fan, I would just get ready for extensive tumult. I mean, this isn't going to subside much for very long. We're just moving. I just feel like we're inching towards a pro model.
Yeah.
And the question is, how long will
anyone that thinks that July 1st is just going to be kind of, okay, we're here. This is the new world.
I don't think so. No.
There's going to be a lot of
legal wrangling. A lot of legal wrangling.
All right. Before we go to headline 4, Husker Online headlines brought to you again by Omaha Steaks. It is Father's Day right around the corner. Still time to get in an order of steaks for your dad or your grandpa or your loved one in your life, that father you might know. And no better time to get on omahasteaks.com. They've got a lot of great deals, a lot of great specials, already heavily discounted. And on top of that, we're going to give you another $35 off. The pop-up ad says 30. We're going to give you $35 off if you use the promo code HuskerOnline at omahasteaks.com. That's $35 off again at omahasteaks.com by using the promo code HuskerOnline. And nothing better than on Father's Day weekend, open up a box of steaks, burgers, put them on the grill.
Yeah, you know what? No camps, no Nebraska camps on Sunday. You should have a good day. I should have a good day. Look at that right there on your screen, Sean. How'd you just like to pick one up with your fingers and take care?
I haven't really had time to even have a good steak.
I know.
In the last,
we're rolling.
But I love it.
It's kind of fun.
It's fun. Yeah, it beats working for a living. I always tell people.
Yeah, we always comment. We get incredible access during the camps. This is when you can actually talk to Coach Rule, one-on-one, talk to the other coaches a little bit. You see the players, you see the current players up close. You get a size up like a Jalen George. Like we don't get a lot of that anymore. But here we are. We're just literally like standing next to
Jeremiah Jones.
Jeremiah Jones came to town. That's 6'5" and 220. They got some good. Hey, Sean, it's a good looking team, right?
Oh yeah, no, there's a lot.
It's better looking. Nebraska's athletic profile has been enhanced by Rule.
Now, did you mention Malcolm Simpson?
Malcolm Simpson, the defensive lineman, freshman, looks physically ready to me. Now, is he ready? Is he ready emotionally? Is he ready mentally and all of that? There's technique issues you have to teach a kid, but God, he's a good. I mean, that's an impressive, Sean. That's a big, impressive kid. That's the kind of thing you see over there, right?
Oh yeah, there's lots of good-looking guys. But
you mentioned Gunner. You mentioned Gunner Gatula. Looks ready to roll.
Looks healthy. Looks fresh.
Yeah, looks ready to roll.
I mean, he could very well be the right tackle.
Yeah, 100.
All right, enough talking to the pad. Let's get now into headline number 4, the very popular Mayhem Monday. Let's go back to 2003, Nebraska at Missouri. And we've had a lot of fun doing these, where Mayhem Monday is a little bit different than Flashback Friday. We try to, as you would say, relive a freak show, like a very stressful situation with Nebraska football. Well, the game was stressful. Nebraska was ranked number 10 in the country. Bo Pelini was the coach. Things looked like they were really rolling at that point with Frank Solich and Bo Pelini in that first year together. Nebraska had the lead going into the fourth quarter. Missouri scored 27 unanswered points in Columbia.
Good God.
To win 41-24. Nebraska was winning this game. Keep in mind, they were up 24-14 in the fourth quarter.
Then you know what happened after the game on the field? There was mayhem.
So
there was mayhem.
Missouri had not beaten Nebraska in Columbia in a long time.
So what happened?
And
a bunch of people spilled out on the field.
Nebraska was ranked 10th, and it was a night game. And Missouri students were always pretty rowdy, but the students stormed the field.
Despite I'm going to call it the field. I'm not going to try to name the field because I can't pronounce it.
Throat Field.
You can't either. The stadium announcer. The stadium announcer was urging them not to storm. Do not storm the field. They did anyway. And then what happened, Sean?
So they get on the field as the game comes to an end, and it's mayhem on the field, true mayhem on this Mayhem Monday. And Brad Smith, and this video was actually shot by Travis Justice from the old Fox 42.
Oh, and there it was.
And Brad Smith was walking off the field. A fan comes running at Nebraska's Kellen Houston, and he just decks this guy, just completely knocks him out. And I know there's some still pictures in the article I sent you to, Megan, that really show kind of the validity of the punch. But it was kind of the double whammy. You had a field storm, Nebraska lost, and then you had a player caught on film, an era where camera phones didn't exist, just lay a right hook to a Missouri fan.
A chopping right hook that I couldn't believe it. Now, that next day when I got home, they're playing it on CNN over and over, which that's mayhem, by the way. You have a Nebraska player, they're being shown on CNN over and over with this chopping impressive. I mean, that is that's what I kept telling Tricks, is that's an impressive punch. I mean, I hate to say it, but it is. As a former boxer, I'm like, oh my God.
Well, I'll never forget the guy was laying on the ground.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, they dang near had to bring out like smelling salt.
Oh yeah. Well, his name was Matthew Scott, by the way. He was a 21-year-old kid at the time, and the punch fractured his nasal passage, and he also suffered a deviated septum, whatever that is. But he required surgery, and by the way, some of his teeth were also loosened. I mean, Sean, that's a major league punch. That's a South O special.
Look at his here. He gets boom.
I watched it over and over that next day because they wouldn't stop playing it. So, I mean, I'm not, and I don't think you are doing it. We're not suggesting that this is a pleasant moment for anybody.
No, it was this is why field stormings, you don't want them to happen.
100.
And this type of, when guys are just getting off the field in an emotional, full combat
right
football game.
You played football. I mean, you're amped up.
And you see some guy literally charging at you full speed.
Right.
You know, your emotions are still cooling off at that point.
Yeah.
And Kellen
I don't even know if they're cooling off yet, to be honest.
And Kellen Houston was a stand-up guy. He's a doctor now. So this was like a total out of character moment.
It was
for a guy like Kellen Houston, who was a good role player, stand-up guy on the team.
Yep.
And
must be just tougher than hell too. Nebraska, he was ultimately charged in Columbia, Missouri with a misdemeanor for punching that fan. He agreed to plead guilty to, it was called peace disturbance by fighting. So that was a misdemeanor. So that probably made sense, right?
It was the Missouri crowds, though, especially for those night games, were rowdy. Like those were.
Oh, Sean, they were. That place got, like, as the years went on in that series in my career, it started getting a little out of control at Missouri, almost Colorado-like.
For sure. You'd go to Harpo's on Friday night, the big bar there, and Nebraska fans, like they like to do, take bars over. And guys that I knew had like beers poured on them in the bar.
Yeah. It started to get quite an edge to it.
Well, my old roommate Ross, he went down with me on a couple of those trips down to Columbia. And it was either this one or the 05 one. I don't remember which one it was, but a Missouri fan, a kid, took a Nebraska fan's purse, an older woman, and Ross ran the guy down.
Really?
And like took him to the ground and got the lady's purse back.
Ross, nice work.
Yeah, he's
nice work. Yeah, I remember after Davison caught that ball off the grass, right? The kick. Me and McKeever, after we filed our stories, were walking to our car, and that parking lot was not, there were still Missouri fans out there. I just remember McKeever saying, simple, don't look up, just look forward. Do not look up, just look forward. Don't do anything.
Didn't you do your post-game interviews at Missouri?
Outside.
It was outside. So like
it's crazy.
Fans would yell into the post-game press conference.
Yeah, not good job either. It wasn't like that.
It was cuss words.
Right. It wasn't like good job, coach. No, it wasn't.
Baylor was that way too, and Baylor didn't have any fans. So like that was, but one year there was some heat on Sean Watson, and we were sitting outside in Baylor in 09.
Yeah.
And Nebraska won like 20-10. It was an ugly win. Cody Green's first start. Sue played good, but it didn't feel great. And some fan yells into Bo Pelini's press conference, "You suck, Watson!" And Bo you could just see. I mean, he just explodes.
Yeah.
And after the presser, Bo rifles over to see if he can find this guy.
Yeah. Those were the days.
Yeah, I never understood how like a Division I school would have their press conferences in the concourse.
In the concourse outside the locker room. Odd.
Right? Ron Brown even said their visitor locker rooms were the worst. Like they didn't have stalls on the bathroom doors.
Nice.
So it was just like open toilets.
Right, got it.
And you walk in there.
That's probably good enough, Sean.
And
I get the gist of it.
Just like a mental gymnastics, like your players don't have any privacy to go to the bathroom.
Well,
Missouri, but yeah, that was a big win for Gary Pinkel.
Kind of me. Yeah.
That was kind of at that point, like the win that really brought Gary Pinkel over the top.
God, there's a name. Pinkel got really good at Missouri. He was
better in the SEC.
Yeah. Well, he's not there anymore. He's had health problems. Right.
Old Don James guy from Washington. Nick Saban was an old Don James guy, but yeah, Gary Pinkel,
he got good.
He wasn't like a real dynamic personality.
Really. No, but he got that program to a high level.
He had Brad Smith and Chase Daniel. And when you have two NFL dudes like that as quarterbacks,
that helps.
Like Bo Pelini could not figure out Brad Smith. That was like the one guy that really gave him that the 1 year he was here in 03. And then Cosgrove couldn't figure him out.
Right. Can't remember all that.
They had a little more success against Chase Daniel, but Chase Daniel still kind of had the upper hand. But yeah, then they went, think about Missouri's quarterbacks. You go Brad Smith, you go Chase Daniel, Blaine Gabbert.
Jeez.
NFL.
Jeez. Yeah, that's impressive. Yeah, those trips were, It got kind of weird down there. That's what I remember about it. It got kind of weird, and then it all stopped, right? Kind of miss it. Kind of miss going to Columbia. I kind of miss going to Columbia. I only miss going south.
The
during the
once a
winter.
year trip to Texas in like November.
Yeah, I miss those south trips.
Get some good barbecue on
Yeah, wear your shorts.
Wear your shorts.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, like last year when we went to College Station, or on the
Yeah.
satellite camps, we stopped in College Station.
Oh yeah.
And that was always kind of fun just to go back because
Yeah, you relive
like
those memories.
I've been to College Station for even Waco. We were staying in Waco. I haven't been these places
It's
a long
nice.
time.
It's nice to go that way. It's not like going to the Caribbean, but it brings back a flood of memories, right?
No doubt. Well,
I think it's
Monday.
a better. I say this all the time. You're going to kill me, but it's a better cultural fit for Nebraska. It is. Let's face it.
Yeah, but $40 million difference annually is a little bit better fit.
Yeah. Financially
fit.
Yeah.
But if you have good ideas for Mayhem
Yeah.
Monday, share them. We'll definitely review them. We've got a couple more. And I think this will just mainly be a summer series, off-season series, because we'll be in regular season content or we won't necessarily
take this right to the season. Probably
we'll take it into August. So we definitely have a lot more Mondays to go. Mayhem Monday.
Yeah. So yeah, just throw your ideas in the comment section and we'll consider them.
All right. Let's go to headline 5. Odds and ends. How about Mark Manning? AJ Ferrari commits to Nebraska wrestling. He was originally set to go to North Carolina. Well, who is AJ Ferrari? He's a national champion wrestler who won the national title at Oklahoma State. Trained to be an Olympian and a world level wrestler. Was set to come to North Carolina. Was not able to get through admissions.
Okay.
Becomes a free agent. And Nebraska gets him. And this looks like it will probably be the heavyweight. He could do 197.
Maybe. Yeah.
But it's a perfect scenario because AJ Ferrari could be your heavyweight. Cade Ziola can learn from AJ Ferrari. And then Cade Ziola could be your heavyweight after that.
That would work perfect. Now, he told some reporter, it was in a report, that they haven't decided yet where he's going to which weight he's going to wrestle. As you mentioned, national titles as a freshman at Oklahoma State, and then started 10-0 as a sophomore at Oklahoma State. And then was in a serious car accident. The following summer, he was charged with sexual battery. Eventually dismissed. But he did not compete for a program in 2022, 2023, or 2023, 2024. Then landed at Cal State Bakersfield, now landed at Nebraska. And like you said, this would be, I believe this is now 7 All-Americans in Nebraska's lineup.
2 national champions.
Yeah, 7 All-Americans. The Mangler, Mark Manning. I mean, I just wonder, like amateur hour here a little bit, but how much is Penn State looking over its shoulder at Nebraska right now?
Well,
Nebraska's second nationally.
Think about the swing they're going to go from to maybe getting no points at 197 or heavyweight to now getting national championship points.
If he wins the national
but I'm saying, like,
possible, yeah.
He's going to be a top 4 guy.
Yeah, you'd think so. His resume suggests that. But I just wonder now I hope the comments show some grace towards me. I don't have a working knowledge of what Penn State has back. I don't know. Maybe Penn State's not afraid of Nebraska at all. But Nebraska was second nationally at the NCAA Wrestling Championships behind Penn State. Beat Iowa. I mean, I never thought I'd see
Iowa.
Never thought I'd see in my lifetime Nebraska pass Iowa in that sort of setting. Now, does Manning have his sights set on Penn State? Is that what this is about? I don't know. We'd have to ask him. I mean, you would say, of course he does, Sipple. What do you think he's doing? Well, how realistic is it is what I'm getting at. How realistic is it?
I don't know. I mean, again, until you kind of see what the lineups look like and
7 All-Americans
and the matchups. But yeah, Penn State has 10 All-Americans or 9. I mean, they have an All-American in every weight class.
I imagine, yeah.
They do.
Yeah. I
mean, they're well funded and they train with the Olympic team essentially.
Are they well heeled?
A lot of the Olympians, as Mark Manning said on our show, like train there.
And he just says, he's very blunt. He says they buy their guys.
But if you're Iowa, I mean, this is kind of like a whoa, like
100.
It would be like Iowa volleyball passing Nebraska volleyball. Like you'd kind of get a little freaked out.
Yeah, I would think so.
To an extent, in like a smaller scale, like Iowa baseball kind of jumping Nebraska baseball in the last few years where they've beat them on the field.
I'm going to throw something at you because I was going to write a column about this. I still could. I'm going to throw something at you here. Who would you say is the Nebraska athletics coach of the calendar year?
That's Mark Manning.
Or is it Rhonda?
Number 2 in the nation, Mark Manning. You can't take that. I mean,
is it clearly Manning?
He maximized his team to finish second. Softball made super regionals, which was very good.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't make it to Oklahoma City.
I think you might be right about that.
But I would still go Manning, and the way his athletes all peaked at the time they needed to peak.
Is there anybody else in that conversation?
I mean, John Cook. Like, look, they should have won the national title. Like Penn State, they had them beat, and they lost that game.
I think I would lean towards the Ravel Manning angle because it was not as expected. You didn't necessarily expect it. You kind of did with Ravel. You didn't know how far Jordy Ball could take him, and she took him to about maybe where I expected. I think you can sell me on Manning. It's Manning. That's the conversation. Manning, Ravel, and Cook.
One, it was a little misleading throughout the year because I think they had some injuries in their lineup, so they never really had like
Manning or Ravel.
Manning.
His
wrestling lineup. There were points where a couple guys were out here or there, so you didn't really know. And then once they got to the national tournament, you knew how good they were. So
you'd go Manning, coach of the year for the Husker.
I'd go Manning.
Okay.
All right. Speaking of former Husker coach, how about Dave Van Horn?
Jeez.
As the players from the early 2000s would refer to him as the Deuce or the Gangster. But the Gangster is back.
I didn't know they called him that.
They called him.
I totally understand why.
The Deuce, and they called him the Gangster. Well, the Gangster's coming back to Omaha. Will this be Dave Van Horn's last year? That's when Ed Service and him embraced after he beat Creighton in the regionals and Ed Service retired, you could read the lips of Dave Van Horn saying, "I'm not far behind you."
Interesting. We had an up close look at this guy for 4 or 5 years at Nebraska, and it was incredible. When I think of the greatest Nebraska coaches any sport, he's definitely in the top 5. There's no, and I would maybe nudge him a little higher than that. Maybe get him to 3. I mean, what he did with Nebraska baseball program was remarkable at the time, and he was so formidable. Just, I guess, as a person, I always said. Sean, back then I dealt with him a lot. I covered the hell out of baseball. And he was a guy you would not want to play poker against. He was shrewd, is what I'm telling you. That's why they call him the Gangster, the Deuce. Very shrewd, tough, sharp, had to be ready. Hey, Sean, he was the kind of coach, and you've dealt with coaches like this, where you couldn't go in cold. You had to know where you're going because he would cut you up if you didn't. Kind of cut you up in a subtle manner, but he'd do it. You know, he would make clear that you don't know what you're talking.
He was like a version of Nick Saban almost.
Yeah,
not as outspoken.
Not bad, Sean. Not bad, and not as accomplished as Nick Saban.
No,
but
yeah, Dave Van Horn's not won a national title, so
right.
They are going to go to Omaha as the favorite.
But you think back to that period when he was at Nebraska. Whew, it was amazing. It was remarkable, right?
You could have Arkansas versus Oregon State again. You know, that's the one where they dropped the fly ball.
Arkansas dropped the fly
and
ball.
they could have won.
Right.
And those will be the 2 sexy picks to advance to the finals.
Great deal for Omaha that they got. I mean, they just got the 2 SEC schools, but they got the right ones. They got LSU and Arkansas.
Yeah, then you get a good balanced field. Arizona's coming. You're going to have
Oregon State, UCLA.
I mean, you're still waiting on
Louisville.
State, Duke.
You have Louisville.
Louisville's there. So it's a good balanced field. Like as far as the conferences that are represented, even though the SEC had a huge advantage with all the hosting and all the national seats, they only get 2.
Yep. To your delight, they only get 2.
That's why they play the game.
Okay.
And then finally, I did want to hit on this and odds and ends.
Yeah.
One thing about these camps, it's fun to go to, but it's fun to go back and you run into people like Donovan McNabb's. He wasn't at camp, but Donovan McNabb's kid was at
Are we
camp.
sure Donovan wasn't there?
I don't know if he was.
We didn't see him, and nobody told us he was there. But there was Donovan McNabb's son, who was an 11th grade, going to be an 11th grader.
out of Arizona.
Receiver.
And then you had Jared Helming, former Husker lineman.
He was there. We talked to Jared quite a bit.
Yeah, Chris Kolarovic was there as a coach at Iowa Western now.
Yep. Back to Jared real quick. Jared's son was there, Kyle.
He's a freshman, going to be sophomore in Johnston, Iowa.
Tight end. I met Kyle. Jared at one point was the number 8 recruit in the nation.
D-line. I looked at defensive lineman.
Oh, number 8 D lineman.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for looking that up.
Yeah. He was a high 4-star though.
No, wow. So Jared was there, and it was great talking to Kolarovic, right?
Yeah, he looks good. He's doing well. He's coaching. He's living over on the campus at Iowa State, and he runs
Iowa Western.
Iowa Western runs
Right.
the linebacker room there for him.
Yeah, he was doing great. I'm happy for him because he wants to be a coach. He's got a spot now. He talked about how, it's a tough go here. 2021, 2022 he played, and he said that he lost a little love for football because of all the losing. And now he's got this job at a power, right? You're going to call Iowa Western a power, has reinvigorated him, which is beautiful. And you could kind of tell talking to him, right? He was really insightful.
But yeah, a lot of former Huskers we caught up with, and we'll probably see more the next few weeks.
Yeah, those camps are.
Mike Erickson was there. With
Amir Abdullah.
Amir
Amir Abdullah just volunteered his top. I was just talking to Amir. We had kind of winded up an interview, and he just volunteered his top 5 Husker running backs of all time, put himself number 4. I could see that. But I was just like, Amir, thank you. This is awesome. I have one of the best running backs in Nebraska football history just volunteering his top 5, which was Lawrence Phillips, Mike Rozier, Amon Green, Amir Abdullah, and then a tie for 5th between Rex Burkhead and Calvin Jones, which I'd put Calvin Jones 5, Rex down the line a little bit. How about you? I'd put Calvin strongly at number 5.
Probably ahead of Burkhead.
Yes. 100. Burkhead be in that next group.
I do think Abdullah, though, is about right where he's at, but
where he put himself.
Roger Craig is kind of the one.
Oh, that's the one, Sean. You're right.
The thing is, Roger was one of those guys that was almost a better pro than he was at Nebraska.
Well, because he played with Rozier, So, yeah, it's kind of a. I don't know. I don't think the top 5 or 6 that hard. It gets really hard after that.
Yeah, then there's a lot of guys you could throw into that camp. But yeah, lots of former Huskers.
Yeah, it's fun
that we catch up with at these camps.
It's fun. It was fun talking to Jared Helming. How
about Ron Brown too? Like, here's a guy that is probably he's been around the program since the 80s. I think how many camps he's been around in his time. He's still working them like it's like 1988.
Gives a great speech to every group of campers.
He's like, there's a little break, and he speaks during the break.
And it's a powerful speech, as you'd imagine, about resiliency. How he squeezes a tennis ball and says, "This is what you got to be like a tennis ball. You have to bounce back. You got to whip back into form. When you hit the ground, you got to come up." So yeah, he does that. It's a great speech. I like going over there. I mean, like I said earlier, you get to see guys up close. You can size up guys really well. You see guys you don't see like Sukup, the quarterback. All of a sudden, there he is in front of you conducting a drill. I hardly ever see him.
Yeah, and he looks great. And
hell yeah,
he coached a team in 7-on-7, and I mean, even Gramstad. You're like, okay,
there's Gramstad, the backup quarterback. Yeah,
you could see what
working with Trey Taylor, who's like part of the team almost. It seems like, right?
So there's a lot of observations because you got to understand, like the normal access now, it's very closed off. Like once they start the season,
that's what I'm. Yeah,
and we're kind of kept in a private room.
Yeah.
So you don't really even get eyes on the team until game days.
And then here we are at a camp, and you're like watching for 3 hours, 4 hours. You run into Matt Rule. You get to talk to him. He tells you some things that are interesting. You run into Donovan Raiola, makes fun of you, but it's kind of funny, right? We ran into Dana Holgerson, had a nice little conversation with him.
It's kind of our job to be over there too. I mean, it eats up most of your June, but it's important.
What the hell? I mean, you got to be over there.
All right.
Now, having said that, you're going over to the kickers camp right now. I'm not, because I got it right. And I got electricians at the house, so I got to get over there.
All right. Well, good show. We'll be back Wednesday for Steve Sipple. I'm Sean Callahan signing off for Husker Online Headlines.